Mount Spickard is the 16th highest and 9th most prominent peak in Washington. It sits in the northernmost part of the North Cascades National Park, as its summit is only 2.1 miles from the US-Canada border. While Spickard is a heavily glaciated peak, the standard route via Depot Creek and Ozole Lake bypasses the massive Silver Glacier by taking scree fields and snow to the summit. Join me on this climb with my buddy Trevor. We started from the Depot Creek Trail, which is located 50 feet from the US-Canada border. The Depot Creek Trail is an unmaintained trail that follows Depot Creek all the way to Lake Ozelle. The trail varies from a nice path through the forest to a non-existent path straight through Depot Creek. Trevor and I started around noon and made our way through a gentle, forested valley following the creek. The recent rainy weather created an unbelievably wet approach. Everything was soaked and soon were we. Luckily, the trail was flat and easy to follow, minus some massive blowdown sections along the trail. That changed as we approached the famed Depot Creek Falls and began to ascend steeply, continuing the theme of following along the creek. Suddenly, we broke out of the trees and onto the waterfall. 3 ropes were laid down to help climbers ascend the wet, moss-covered slopes. Although slippery, the ropes allowed us to bypass the section with little difficulty. Once passed, we headed back into the woods and continued the grueling ascent through the boulder fields and tree root staircases carved into dirt. Both were slippery. We gained 1,000 feet in 0.3 miles here. Once above the waterfall, the trail flattened as we headed through marshlands and inched along the sides of boulder fields before re-meeting with Depot Creek. Here, the trail became non-existent as most people follow the creek up to Ozole Lake by staying in the middle of the creek. We opted to cross its right side and stay high along the boulders all the way to the lake. At this point, it finally stopped drizzling on us, and the clouds parted just enough for us to get a glimpse of Red Bout and the massive Red Bout Glacier. Also, the lake is a small turquoise alpine lake that sits at 5,700 at the base of Mox Peaks, which towered above. Mountain goats hop straight up a waterfall in the distance. We found a nice sandy spot on the lake's shore and set up camp around 4 p.m. Alright, I'm at Ozole Lake. This is going to be our camp spot for tonight. We're situated about 5,500 feet at the foot of Mount Spickard. Overall, today was pretty miserable, not gonna lie. It rained on us almost the whole way up. Not hard, but drizzled. Everything was soaking wet. The approach into Spickard, like most North Cascadian peaks, is just like overgrown and a lot of water crossings and whatnot. So it's just wet normally. So when it rains, it's like really, really wet. So we both got soaked. I mean, my shoes were absolutely destroyed. I'm trying to heat boiled rocks all afternoon and put them in there. Let's see if that does anything tonight. But yeah, I'm excited to see this campground tomorrow when the weather's great, because it's pretty fucking awesome. I mean, Mox Peaks are above us, Redabouts a little bit to the right, and just a bunch of the false summits of Spickard are visible too. So it's this is dope. This is really cool. So yeah. The night was cold and the slower moving water froze. Depot Creek, however, didn't freeze, meaning we still have to find a way to cross it. We decided to cross at the rocky Ozole Lake outflow. My right boot took a dip in the frigid water. Awesome. Once past the creek, we ascended some moderate boulder fields, staying left before turning into a rock ledge at 7,000 feet. Mount Redabout towered behind us, its rocky summit shining in the dawn light. From here we crossed some easy snowfields before reaching the bottom of the 40-degree snow slope. We put on our helmet and crampons and unsheathed our axes. As we ascended, the slope steepened. Trevor bought his curved axe, which was definitely the move. From the reports, most people use 1 or 2 curved axes for this section. I only brought my longer glacier axe. We ended up ascending a wrong chute, which led to some nerve-wracking backtracking, before we traversed 300 feet south towards a notch at 8,000 feet. We took off our crampons here, as it would be rock all the way up to the summit. We quickly realized that it snowed here recently, melted, and refroze overnight. This meant that some of the rocks were covered in a thin layer of ice. This added a level of difficulty and caution to our ascent and descent. From the notch, we headed up a scree field and some easy class 3 terrain on some of the bigger rocks. The crux of this section came at 8,400 feet as we pulled ourselves over some exposed lichen-covered wet rocks. At this point, the sun had vanished and we found ourselves in a whiteout. Nonetheless, we powered on, reaching a notch at 8880. We ended up going a bit high, but opted to drop down and ascend the summit via a steep rock chute partially covered in fresh snow. We summited at 9 a.m. Summit of Mount Spickard, the 9th most prominent peak in Washington at 8973. About just before 9 a.m. We started at 5:30, so not too bad. A little bit tedious getting down, but not too crazy. And yeah, we all see you guys. The icy winds kept our time up top short as we quickly began our descent. The rock section was slow going, but not particularly difficult as we picked our way down to a notch at 8,000 feet. Descending the snow section was a bit tricky for me, as I had little experience descending a snow slope this steep. Luckily, my crampons gripped the slopes nicely, and we were able to descend by angling our crampons on their side for the steep section, before digging our heels into the snow as the slope grade lessened. Once off the snow, we sighed a breath of relief before stashing our gear and making our way down to Ozole Lake. We reached camp at 11:30. After a nice break at camp, we packed up and made our way back to the cars. My legs, which had been holding up so well, really began to feel the mileage as we hiked 7 miles back. Overall, while there are far more interesting and technical ways to climb Spickard, I really enjoyed this route. Once we broke out of the trees, the views of Mox and Redbout were jaw-dropping. The snow section definitely pushed my limits, but not in an unsafe way, as I was able to find my rhythm on the descent.